Hey, Dan, how about we go to that Japanese restaurant I want to try?
But my mom's expecting me home for dinner.
Dan awkwardly replied. Again? I rose an eyebrow. Predictably, his next move was taking out his phone and calling Mommy Dearest.
Mom says eating out is very expensive. It's your idea, so you're paying, okay?
Excuse me? Did I mishear him? Unbelievable. So, through gritted teeth, I said, Forget it. I'm going home. Then I left him standing there with a stupid look on his face. Yep, that idiot was my boyfriend, Dan. He's in his 20s, but every conversation is still, my mom this and my mom that. It's so exhausting. At first, I thought I'd found a manly, impeccable man to rely on. Instead, it just goes to show you can't judge a book by its cover, y'all. It all started with me coming back to the country, and it was hard finding my feet here again. Also, I hadn't had a boyfriend for, let's say, a long time. I wasn't that desperate, but my auntie insisted on matchmaking me with this cute guy. I thought, why not? First impressions, Dan was fine. He'd just graduated from a prestigious college, and he seemed so gentle and kind. We spent a good time chit-chatting, so yeah, after that we started dating. It was swell at first, but then the abnormal details about him began to surface. We arranged a date at mine once. The plan was to cook a meal together, then relax watching a movie. But as soon as he arrived, he walked straight over to the couch and started watching TV without any helpful intention. I dragged him into the kitchen, passed him a carrot and the peeler. He looked confused, then stuttered,
But I don't know how.
I tried to show him, but despite explaining it in great detail, Dan still fumbled to peel one lousy carrot. Then, yep, you guessed it, at one point he called his mom. Then he told me,
My mom says the kitchen is a very dangerous place. I could cut or burn myself. We could go back to my place. My mom can do the cooking.
I glared at his arms akimbo.
Or we can eat out,
Dan mumbled.
Only if it's on you, Claire. It's not my fault.
I growled while shaking my head. Fine, then I'm not coming with you. Then I pushed him out and slammed the door shut behind him. What the hell just happened? Still, I told myself that maybe he was just scared, since he has never cooked before. One time we were in a clothes shop, and I spotted this shirt that I knew would suit him. It wasn't his usual style, but I insisted he tried it on, and ooh, he looked so good in it. Dan seemed to like it too, as he admired himself in the mirror, then said,
It does look nice. But wait, can you please take a photo so I can send it to my mom? Well, she's the one who buys all my clothes, so...
What? So now he needed approval from his mom before he bought anything? Jeez. Anyway, I took a couple of photos and he sent them to his mom. They exchanged messages, then he turned to me and said,
Okay, Mom says you can buy me it.
Me? My eyes widened.
Yeah, Mom says you chose it, so you should buy it for me.
Wait, what? I literally froze for seconds. Speechless, I could only glare at him before I found the means to leave.
Claire, what's wrong?
Dan chased after me, but I ignored him. Okay, I admit that, after a few dates, it was easy to figure out he was a total mommy's boy. But I told myself that it was sweet he loved his mom so much, and I never expected it to be that extreme. After that, I used the silent treatment on him, but he wouldn't quit bugging me. Then, he told me he wanted to take me out to my favorite restaurant as a birthday treat. Ooh, this sounded great! Perhaps he'd realized something and wanted to make it up for me. We were holding hands and walking toward the restaurant when we passed by a shoe store, and in the window display were the perfect pair of boots. Well, I'm a girl, and it was my birthday. I pulled Dan's arm. Danny, look! I pointed at the boots. I want those. I grinned from ear to ear.
Okay,
Dan replied blandly. My smile faded. I mean, they'd make the best birthday present. Ugh, since when did a girl like me have to ask for a gift?
Why?
Dan shrugged.
You like them. I don't.
My face reddened with anger. But it's my birthday. Dan scratched his head and forced a smile.
Sorry, babe. Last night I spent my allowance on some new games, so I'm broke now.
Pfft, I sneered. Why don't you ask your mom? And he unexpectedly went mad.
Hey, you're obviously the wealthier one. How come you keep asking me to buy you stuff?
Enough! I stopped dead. I have never, ever dated anyone as awful as you before. You're a grown-ass man, so stop running to your mommy every time you forget how to turn the kettle on or stub your toe. And why on earth do you still get an allowance at your age? It's over. Then I turned to leave, without letting him have the last word. So freaking unreal. Trust me, to arrive back in the country and end up straight into this bizarre mommy's boy circumstance. But yeah, at least I was finally free of him now. It's been a few weeks since then, but just the thought of Dan still made me so mad. Ugh, I needed to get out of here and live a little. So I called my close friend Philip and arranged to meet him and some of my trusted guy friends at a bar.
Cheer up, little girl, he teased. I know what will put a smile on your face. Our gaming group found this hilarious player. All we have to do is throw a few compliments his way, and he buys us all new items. Then, whenever we go out partying after a victory, this noob also pays for it all. What an ego.
I mocked, Congrats, bros. Wish my ex-date was also that generous. Then I rolled my eyes. He never spent a cent. Well, at least not without asking his mom for permission first. Philip laughed with a surprise.
Hey, this noob's the same. He brags that despite being broke, his mom came up with the idea of matching him with rich girls so he can be covered.
Hold up. That didn't sound right. I had a real bad feeling about this. Then Philip pointed across the bar and said,
Oh, speak of the devil,
and patted my back. A chill ran down my spine as I took a deep inhale of breath and turned to see it was Dan. And oh, he had a new girlfriend already. I quickly made up some excuse and bailed before they saw me. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about Dan's new girlfriend. Whatever Dan and his mom were doing was no less than scamming. So I arranged to meet up with Philip at a diner, and I confided in him about my history with Dan and how I was concerned about his new girlfriend. Philip offered to help and said he would try and find out more information. A few days later, he reported back with his findings. Turns out, Dan and his mom had learned the Claire lesson, so this time with his new girlfriend, Lizzie, they were playing it differently. Dan, as his mom had ordered, took some sensitive photos of Lizzie, and now every time she refused to pay for something, he threatened to post them online. OMG! This made me feel so sick. This poor girl was trapped and were sucked dry of all her money. This was extortion, and I was going to put a stop to it. It didn't take long for me to find Lizzie online. I then dropped her a message saying I wanted to help, and we arranged to meet up in person. After hearing me say that I knew the truth, Lizzie burst into tears. I can't let those pictures get out, so I have to keep on being his girlfriend and pay for everything. She rubbed the tears off her cheeks. I had to borrow money, and now the interest means I'm in thousands of dollars worth of debt, and I still have no guts to speak out. Let's put an end to this. I slammed my fist on the table. Be brave, Lizzie. I've got your back. The day after Philip and I went with Lizzie to tell her parents, it was bad. Her mom started blubbering and tried to cover her face while her dad went furious.
No one does this to my little girl and gets away with it,
Philip replied.
Too right. The bad guys are going down.
We spent the rest of the day gathering evidence, including all of the threatening messages Dan had sent her and the receipts she'd kept from the extortionate purchases he'd forced her to make for him. That was when Lizzie received a message from Dan.
There's this expensive restaurant I want to go to. Babe, take me there tonight or else. Love you, X.
Lizzie replied that she agreed. Then, knowing Dan was out, we went around to his house. We confronted Dan's mom as soon as she let us inside. She was frightened and eventually confessed that she didn't have a job and it was Dan's dad who provided for them. As a result, she spoiled Dan so badly that it annoyed his dad, so he left. Then she sadly blurted out, He didn't say a word to me. He just left Dan a note that said, Take care of yourself and your mom.
I knew Dan would be miserable without his luxuries, so I told him to find a rich girlfriend to spoil him, and this time, she looked from me to Lizzie, to make sure she would be too trapped to ever leave. There was a knock at the door. She looked at us awkwardly before she went to answer it. We followed her, and that was when we saw 2 cops arresting her. She bursted into tears as they took her away. I guess she thought she was a devoted mother who was doing right by her son, when, in truth, she went about it in totally the wrong way. She ended up going to jail, and her house was sold to pay off Lizzie's debts. As for Mommy's boy Dan, as an accomplice, he ended up doing community restitution. Hey, this would probably do him some good, as he'd finally learn what a day's hard work actually felt like. Thankfully, Lizzie gradually got over this traumatizing event and was ready to start dating again. With Philip. About me, well, I'm still single, but I don't feel lonely anymore, as I have awesome friends. Besides, this way I have no guys bumming money off me. Hi, that's me, Maxine, hiding behind some bushes and spying on a girl. Don't get me wrong, I don't have a crush on her, nor am I a total psychopath. I'm just doing a favor for my mate Damon. But if I'd known how crazy this was all going to get, I'd never have agreed to help him. It all started when Damon fell in love with this girl, Sophie. She had this mysterious charm that made him want to talk to her right away. And he did. She didn't even glance at him. She just walked away. Ouch. I didn't like her one bit. She was so stuck up. But Damon didn't give up that easily. He tried all kinds of tricks to get her attention, even waiting for the bus with her, even though he had a car. Nothing worked, though, and this made him miserable. He begged for my help, but I said, "No way." Then he said, "Aw, come on, Maxine, you're a girl, so just befriend her or something. Maybe you can find out what she likes, her fave foods, music, etc. Then I can try to impress her. Please, I'm begging you. I'll even lend you my Nintendo Switch for a month if you agree. You can't say no to that." He had me at that. I'd do anything to get a Nintendo Switch. Fine, it's a deal, but don't blame me if it doesn't work. So after class that day, I searched for Sophie. She was at the bus stop, and I was about to approach her when suddenly she walked away. I decided to follow her, and on the way, she stopped to help an old lady cross the road. Wow, I was surprised. For someone with such a cold face, she had a pretty warm heart. Maybe she wasn't so bad after all. After that, she started walking towards the park, and by then it was starting to get dark. What was she doing? She sat down on a bench in a creepy part of the park, almost like she was waiting for someone. I hid behind a bush so she wouldn't see me, but I was totally freaked out. Suddenly, 2 guys appeared and started talking to her, but they didn't seem like her acquaintances. Oh my gosh, she looked panicked. I had to help. I quickly shouted, "Help! Officer, please help! There are 2 guys bothering us!" Obviously, there was no officer, but it worked. The 2 guys ran off, and I rushed over to make sure Sophie was okay. She was surprised to see me, but then she hugged me and thanked me for saving her. Her whole body was shaking. She must have been terrified. I walked with her back to our dorm, and she told me how she liked to come to the park at night because it was so peaceful. I told her it was clearly dangerous and that she probably shouldn't go alone anymore. Then we exchanged numbers, and after that we became quite close. Close enough. That was a few days later. I told her Damon had a big crush on her and asked if she'd maybe go on a date with him, but she just shook her head and said she wasn't ready. Her eyes looked sad, so I didn't push it any further. Maybe she'd just gone through a bad breakup? I didn't ask her again, but one night I was heading to her dorm for a movie night when I heard 2 people fighting. It was Sophie and some guy, and she was crying. It looked like the guy was about to hit her, so I ran over and said, "Hey, what the heck do you think you're doing? Leave her alone or I'll call the cops." He just laughed at me and said to Sophie, "We're not done yet." Then he stormed off. I asked Sophie if she was okay and who that guy was. Then she told me how he was her ex and that he kept trying to get back together with her, but she wasn't interested. As she told me this, she started to cry and said, "Because of him, I've become so scared and anxious I'm even too scared to sleep at night.
I felt so sorry for her and told her I was here for her and that she could call me anytime. Well, maybe I shouldn't have said that because that's exactly what she started doing. Every night she'd call me and we'd end up chatting until 3 a.m. I was so exhausted, but I wanted to help her. She seemed so anxious all the time. Damon knew we chatted a lot, but he'd stopped asking about Sophie. It seems he'd lost interest and was more worried about me looking like a zombie from The Walking Dead.
You seriously need some sleep, Maxine. Leave Sophie be. She's clearly got issues. It's probably best to not get too involved.
Easier said than done, though. But that night I decided not to answer her call. I went to bed early, and when I woke up the next morning, I had about 20 missed calls and 50 texts from her. Oh my gosh! Some of them said she was so lonely and that I'd abandoned her. Then one said, if you don't pick up, then I will end it all. Okay, this was crazy. I immediately called her, but she wouldn't pick up. I rushed to her dorm, but nobody answered. I was panicking by then and bashing on the door, screaming, Sophie, open this darn door! But there was still no answer. I was terrified she'd done something bad, so I asked some students to help me bash down the door, and that's when she opened the door. I've never been so happy to see someone alive. I ran over to hug her, but she looked so annoyed. What are you doing here? You're making a scene, she said. What? I was so worried about you. You said you were going to... But she interrupted me and said, you need to get some sleep, Maxine. You seem insane. I couldn't believe it. After all those calls and texts, she was the insane one, not me. I didn't feel like yelling back, so I just left her. I needed some space. She tried to apologize to me over the next few days, but I didn't want to be around her. She even texted me saying if I wouldn't be her friend anymore, then life wasn't worth living. I was so tired of her threats, so I just ignored them. And then things got worse. A few days later, Damon and I were studying together when Sophie called me and said she was in the hospital. She told me that she had a brain tumor and they'd just done a biopsy to see if it was malignant or benign. I couldn't believe it. She asked me if I could pick her up, and I said, of course. This was so scary. I told Damon, and he just said,
I think she's making it up, Maxine. How could she suddenly have a tumor? You guys just had a fight, and suddenly she's in the hospital? Come on, think about it.
I was shocked. Damon, how could you? You're such a jerk. Then I ran off and arrived at the hospital to find Sophie sitting outside wearing a hospital cap. She said her hair had been shaved off for the biopsy, and I asked to see the scar, but she wouldn't show me. She said she'd get a headache if she took it off. I was just glad that she was okay, and gave her a ride home. We made up, and I decided to look after her for the day. She seemed so weak. I couldn't bear to see her suffering. I called Damon to tell him that he owed me an apology and told him about Sophie. And he just said,
oh, wow, okay, sorry, hope she's okay then.
But then a few days later, he called me and said,
listen, Maxine, Sophie's a liar. She didn't have a biopsy. I bumped into her earlier and her cap fell off, and she has a full head of hair under there. No way it would grow back that fast.
Why would she lie to me? I didn't get it. I needed to know the truth, so after class I went to her dorm. She opened the door right away, and sure enough, she had all her hair intact. She probably knew Damon had told me, and so hadn't even bothered to keep up the lie. This made me furious. Straight away, I started shouting at her. Honestly, Sophie, what is wrong with you? Why would you pretend to be sick like that? Friends don't do that. Sophie grabbed my hand and said, Maxine, I'm sorry. I was desperate. I only did it because I missed you and wanted you to care about me again. I took it too far, though. Please forgive me. Are you crazy? I screamed. I was worried sick about you. Are you sure there's not something wrong with you? Sophie started grinning in a weird way and said, the only thing wrong with me is that I'm in love with you, Maxine. She wouldn't let go of my hand, and I just stared in shock. What did you say? You heard me. I love you. Then she started to manically laugh and said, "I've loved you since the day we first met. I knew you were following me, so I pretended to be in danger so you'd come rescue me. Even my ex-boyfriend was fake. He was just one of my friends pretending. Can't you see? I'm willing to do just about anything to get your attention. If that's not love, then what is?" This couldn't be happening. I tried to stay as calm as possible and said, "Listen, Sophie, I'm flattered. Really, I am. But I'm straight. I see you as just a friend, okay?" But Sophie wouldn't give up. She grabbed my hands again and said, "How do you know that? You didn't even try to love me yet. Just give me a chance and I'll show you what true love looks like." I tried to let go of her hands, but it was impossible. Sophie grabbed my hands tighter and tighter that it even began to hurt. She looked me in the eyes and, oh my God, it's like I couldn't recognize her anymore. She looked like a crazy person, like a psychopath. Then she began to speak in a really creepy tone. "You can't get away from me. You're mine now." I was so scared. I needed to get out of here, so I pushed her really hard that she fell on the ground and I ran like a mad woman out of there until I was back in my dorm. Then I called the police, but by the time they reached her dorm, she was gone. I told them what happened and showed them a photo of her, and you won't believe it. Apparently, I wasn't the only girl Sophie had attacked. There were other girls too. After that night, I was terrified. Everywhere I went, it felt like someone was watching me. Then one evening, after my shift at work, I was walking through the park back to my dorm when I heard someone up ahead. I knew right away it was Sophie, but she wasn't alone. She was with some guys. They spotted me and started heading towards me. But I ran as fast as I could, and luckily the police were just outside the park and went in and arrested them. Sounds like a coincidence, right? Well, it wasn't. Sophie's not the only one who can fool people. I knew Sophie was stalking me, so I told the police, and together we created this plan to catch her, and voila, it worked. Sophie, if you're watching this, I wish you all the best, but let's not meet ever again. That's enough stalking for one lifetime.
"All we can do now is pray," the doctor said as he left the room. I looked at Ethan lying on the hospital bed, surrounded by medical equipment, and felt my heart sink. Then Elliot came over to me and said, "Charles, I think you should maybe go home and rest. There's nothing you can do right now." Yeah, Elliot was right. Now I had to be stronger than ever, and in fact, if it wasn't for her, I probably wouldn't have made it through this crazy time. Although Elliot was a newbie in our department, we'd become close very quickly, and I was so grateful for her. I smiled at Elliot and offered to drive her home. And then I went to see my mate Cooper. He'd just got back from living abroad. We'd been friends for years. We first met at a gay pride party. He was bisexual and I was gay. At least, I had been. But now, I wasn't so sure. You see, I realized that every time I was with Elliot, my heart was beating faster than usual. Could it be that? I got so lost in my thoughts, I didn't even see Cooper opening the door. He looked at me and said, "Dude, what's wrong with you? You look like you've seen a ghost." I told him I was in deep trouble and really needed his advice. Lying on his couch, I explained how my boyfriend Ethan was in hospital, but that I'd started having feelings for a girl. Cooper looked at me with sympathy in his eyes, but then he just nudged me and said, "Charles, welcome to my life. It's okay to have feelings for both men and women. It's normal." I asked him what I should do, and he said I should just listen to my heart and let it decide. And then he winked at me and asked to see a photo of this girl who was turning me by. I opened my phone and showed him, and he looked shocked. His eyes went wide, and I asked him if he thought she was hot too. But then he said something that made my blood run cold. "She's my ex-girlfriend, bro." Whoa, what? This couldn't be happening. Then Cooper told me how they used to date and had even set a wedding date. But then something had happened, and they'd broken up. This was too weird. What were the chances? I wanted to ask him more about what she was like and why they broke up, but from the look on his face, it was too painful to speak about. Plus, it also made me feel a bit uncomfortable. I could barely sleep that night, worrying about Ethan and thinking about Elliot and Cooper. It was also strange. The next day, when I was concentrating on my work, my manager suddenly came over and said, "Charles, congrats. You're doing so well. I didn't expect one of your team members that you managed to get promoted so quickly." Huh? What was he talking about? No one had been promoted. I was so confused. He noticed how puzzled I looked and said, "Didn't you know? Elliot took over Ethan's role as director." What? How did this happen? I looked at him in surprise, and he continued. Word on the street is that Elliot is the president's daughter, so it's normal for her to take over. She clearly hid her identity well, didn't she? Then he just laughed and walked off. Wait, if Elliot was the president's daughter, that meant that she was related to Ethan. She was Ethan's sister, right? Oh, this couldn't be. She'd acted like she didn't even know him at the hospital that day. I quickly ran to find her and said, Hey, Elliot, why didn't you tell me you were Ethan's sister? You know that me and your brother are in love. Why would you hide this from me? Elliot just sighed and said, Well, actually, I didn't want to hide this from you. But my parents sent me to help Ethan to run the company. I don't have any experience, so I wanted everyone to treat me like a normal newbie so I could actually learn. That's why I hid my identity. I'm so sorry. I guess she'd done the right thing, as I'd heard lots of gossip behind my back when I'd started dating Ethan. So I sympathized with her. But now it all made sense. The reason I had a crush on Elliot. She looked so similar to Ethan. The same deep blue eyes, the same cheekbones, even the same gestures. She also had the same shrimp allergy, and they both had this pen-spinning habit when they're deep in thoughts. How had I not noticed this before? What if I wasn't in love with Elliot? I was just in love with how she was so similar to Ethan. Okay, that made me feel a lot better. So it was Ethan I loved after all. The next day I went to visit Ethan with a huge bouquet of sunflowers, his favorite. When I was walking through the entrance, I spotted Cooper. Hey, we meet again, I called out. What are you doing here? He told me how he was visiting his ex who'd been in an accident, and I said I was visiting my boyfriend who'd been in an accident. Let's walk together, I said. What room's your ex in? 1502, Cooper said. Are you sure? I mean, that was Ethan's room, I thought. Then it hit me. Hang on, is your ex called Ethan? I asked, really hoping it wasn't. How did you know that? Cooper said. Because Ethan is my boyfriend, I said. This was way too awkward. How was it possible to have this many coincidences? I couldn't believe it. Cooper was shocked too, and said that Ethan was the reason he and Elliot had broken up. He'd fallen in love with Ethan. And Ethan's family had been so upset by this, they kicked Ethan out of the house. Oh, so that's why Ethan never talked to his family and told me to never ask about them. After that mess, unfortunately, their relationship didn't work out. So Cooper packed up his stuff and decided to go study abroad to start things fresh. Oh man, this was a lot to digest. I couldn't help but wonder how Elliot had felt when she'd found out her husband-to-be was in love with her brother. Cooper and I were so shocked, but not as shocked as we were going to be a moment later. We were about to walk into Ethan's room when we heard Elliot's voice. She was speaking in a mean tone, saying, Ethan, you just wait. How will you feel when your boyfriend falls in love with me? It'll be painful, right? I'll make him leave you and it'll serve you right, after everything you've done to me. It's time for a taste of your own medicine. I froze when I heard her saying that. I turned to Cooper and he was just as shocked as I was. Suddenly he burst through the door and I stormed in after him. Elliot almost fell off her chair in surprise at seeing us. Why are you two here together? She said. Hey, stranger, Cooper said. Come on, Elliot, give it up already. It's been a long time. Things were over between us. Just let go and move on. Cooper was so angry, but Elliot just laughed and said, Get over yourself, Cooper. It's not about you. I don't have feelings for you anymore. I just want revenge on my brother. It was so cruel of him to steal you away and ruin my life like that. Then with eyes full of hatred, she turned and looked at poor Ethan lying there. I was furious. I realized exactly what Elliot had been doing. Deliberately flirting with me to steal me away from Ethan. How could she? I confronted her on the spot. What's wrong with you? Why would you treat me like this? And your poor brother? I didn't expect... Before I could continue, though, she interrupted me and said, Charles, wait, listen to me, please. It's true that was my intention at first, but then I fell in love with you. And I thought you were starting to fall for me too. I'm so sorry. Elliot then tried to reach for my hand, but I was disgusted. I pushed her away and said, Get away from me. I don't want to see you anymore. Elliot started crying, but I was too upset to be bothered. I was just so horrified that she'd do this. I was so disappointed in myself, too, for falling into her trap. Poor Ethan. He didn't deserve any of this. I stared at him lying there on the hospital bed. What if he knew? I kept staring at him and swear I saw his fingers twitch. Oh my gosh, was he waking up? Cooper quickly went to the doctor, while I stayed with Ethan and tried to talk to him. Ethan, are you awake? The doctors ran a few tests and said that Ethan had finally regained consciousness and would wake up properly soon. Cooper and I were over the moon. I was so relieved he was going to be okay. And it seemed like Elliot also felt the same as she stood quietly in a corner of the room, tears streaming down her eyes to the corner of her mouth that turned up in the most subtle smile. And as expected, about a week later, Ethan opened his eyes. I'd never been so happy in my life. He started physical therapy, and I spent a lot of time helping him. Of course, Cooper popped in to visit too, and we all had a good laugh about how connected we all were. This must have been real fate, because calling this coincidence would be an understatement. As for Elliot, she just disappeared. But then a few days later, when Ethan, Cooper, and I were chatting together in the hospital, an email popped up on my phone. It was Elliot, and she said she was so sorry for what she'd done, and she just hoped that Ethan and I could forgive her. Then she said she wished us only happiness. I told Ethan and Cooper the good news, and we were all so relieved. Maybe we could all be friends after all. I mean, Elliot might become my sister-in-law one day, right? Life can be so funny. I'm just so glad Cooper appeared when he did, and everything came out into the open. I'd never forgive myself if I'd left Ethan for his sister. Ethan was always the one for me.
Hey, get up! Who are you? What are you doing in my room? What? Excuse me? Who are you? This is my room. This guy was totally crazy. He insisted this was his room, even though I'd picked the key up from reception just 2 hours ago. What do you mean you got the key? I checked in first and just left the key at the reception desk to go out and buy some stuff. Whatever. I like the beach view here, so I'm staying. Unbelievable! Then he pulled out his phone and called reception. Okay, so I'm Liana, and I'm in the tropical paradise of Bali. My dream vacation wasn't off to a great start, thanks to this Charles guy trying to kick me out of my perfect beach view bungalow. Poof! Okay, now listen. They admit they gave you the wrong key. He pointed at his phone. Now, go back to reception, get the right one, and they'll probably give you a free treatment in the spa or something as compensation. No chance. I frowned at him. I like this room. How about you leave and go and enjoy a free spa treatment or whatever? Hell no! He growled at me. I paid for it, so I'm staying put. After that, we continued to quarrel until I felt a pain in my chest. And the next thing I knew, I'd fainted. Ugh. I guess it was just far too hot here for arguing. He put a pillow under my head and said, "Miss, you can stop pretending now. Wake up." I had a feeling he was staring at me, but I didn't move. Fine. Keep on playing your little pretend games, but I'm not leaving this room either. Silence. He must have given up. But then I felt a weight next to me on the bed. Without a second thought, I opened my eyes and leaped off the bed. Oh, turns out he wasn't trying to harm me. Instead, he was just sitting on the side and opening his laptop. Oops. He rolled his eyes, told me to go, and then started typing away. I swished my hair back, then said, "In your dreams? Now, I'm off to enjoy this sunny day. When I come back, I don't want to see your face." After that, I left and spent the rest of the day relaxing on the beach. Bali was just so beautiful. At night, I returned to the bungalow and was ready to fall into bed. "Hello," I said as I walked inside. Whoa, he wasn't there. I'd won the battle of the bungalows. I used the last of my energy jumping up and down on the bed and singing out, "He left, I win, he's a loser, I'm a winner." Then I curled up into bed and started to drift off. Smash! I jolted upright. The window had been broken, and lingering at the foot of my bed was a tall, dark figure. I screamed at the top of my lungs, but they lunged forward and covered my mouth with their hands. "Shut up," they whispered in my ear, then pulled their mask off. It was Charles. Confused, I blurted out, "What the? Why did you break the window?" "Quick, grab your things." I pushed him off me and sat there with folded arms. Nice try, but if this is your way of kicking me out, it won't work. I'm not leaving. Suddenly, another man entered the room. Charles placed his mask back on and quickly grabbed the lamp from the bedside table and threw it at the man. I grabbed my bag in a panic, while Charles took something from his backpack and then he led me out of the room. We took the back road out of the bungalow and headed into the forest. "Where are we going, and who is he?" I questioned, but he remained silent. "Say something. What's going on?" "Shut up for a minute. Now, I'll take you to the airport to leave this island," Charles grumbled. It was pitch black, and I was trampling through the forest in flip-flops. Ugh! Then, to make it even worse, I tripped over a branch and busted my knee. "Great!" He lowered his back and said, "Get on." I was a bit surprised at first. Maybe he wasn't as mean as I first thought. After a while, he decided we should rest in the forest till dawn. Charles fell asleep the second he hit the ground. I couldn't sleep, and then I thought back on the incident in the bungalow. Thinking about it, I remembered Charles grabbing something from his bag. So I crept over to him and slowly reached for his pocket to see what it was. Suddenly, he grabbed my arm tightly. "Charles, let me go!" I hissed out. My arm started to hurt. "Ouch!" "Look, this is a dangerous business I'm in," he said as he let go of me. "I'm trying to keep us both safe." Okay, I could really see worry in his eyes, so I muttered out, "Fine," then rubbed my arm. After a ridiculously uncomfortable night of zero sleep, he nudged me at dawn and told me to start walking. He took my hand and led me forward. I guess it was nice that he was so focused on protecting me, but, why did he keep looking at his phone? Are we lost?" I asked. He kept his eyes on the screen and shook his head. Then he led me into the other direction, and then another. Yep, we were so lost. After what felt like hours of walking in circles, I slumped down on a rock and pulled a water bottle out of my bag. "Let's just find the hotel," I suggested. "No, we can't. Going back is more dangerous." "But, fine. Can you at least tell me why we're sweating our butts off out here?" "I suppose I've implemented you," he sighed out. "Still, you have to take this to your grave." "I won't tell. Promise." "They're after this." He took a USB stick out of his pocket. "The president of the company I work for is carrying out illegal activities, and this is proof." "Whoa, you're like James Bond!" I smiled as I passed him the water bottle. "Hardly." He laughed. Then he thanked me as he took the water and drank half of it without hesitation, then offered me the rest. He told me he was working for another company and had been sent in to investigate. "So, you're betraying the president?" I asked skeptically. "Kind of. Yes. By the way, I know you just wanted a nice vacation, but I've accidentally dragged you into this mess. I'm so sorry." "Don't worry. I guess this is kinda exciting. But this is the summer getaway with the most insects I've ever had." I swatted a mosquito away. I heard him laugh, but hang on. Why was he all blurry? I slurred out, "Is your head heavy?" Then I saw him faint in front of me, and a few seconds later, the world turned black. I flickered open my eyes. My head hurt. I was tied to a chair. And so was Charles. There were some scary-looking guys staring at us. Oh no, this couldn't be good. One man walked over to Charles and in a stern tone said, "Charles, hand over the USB, and no one gets hurt." "I don't know anything about a USB," he muttered out. "I don't want to give out threats with her here. But if you insist..." One of the bodyguards walked towards me, grabbed my hair, and pulled it backward. "If you don't find value in her life, just keep it and watch her die. Stop! Leave her out of this! I don't have the USB. I dropped it somewhere in the forest." Then he turned to me. "I'm so sorry I got you into this." The man sneered. "Stop being so emotional, Charles. It doesn't suit you." I was shaking with fear, as the man pulled something out from his back and pointed at me. "Last chance, Charles?" He shouted out. "No! It's in her pocket!" He must have snuck it in there when we were in the forest. Did he really believe that I would escape and expose the evidence? Then... Cut! Good job, guys! We should be nominated for an Oscar award after this, I joked, while the men kneeled down and untied me. "About time," I said snidely, as I took the USB out of my pocket and began spinning it with my fingers. I peered down at Charles and smirked. "Thanks for protecting me and everything, but it turns out I have what I needed." "What? Who are you?" Charles asked in shock. So I put him out of his misery and told him everything. "Yeah, I'm the daughter of the company's president, the same said company that he stole top-secret information from. My father asked me to go and find him. The wrong reception key was a setup, and my water bottle has a mild sedative in it." "You don't understand. What your father did was illegal," he insisted. I rolled my eyes. Yeah, whatever you say." I started walking away. "Please, see for yourself. Look at the USB." I chewed on my lip. Poor Charles. He was no match for me or my father. Soon, we'd all be on a plane and flying back to the US, and then he would pay for what he did. Well, that was a job well done. So now it was time to relax with a glass of champagne. After all, I deserved it. One simple extraction back home, and my father's company would be saved, and Daddy's little girl would get a pat on the shoulder for yet another job well done. Hooray! But I must say, I kinda pity Charles, being a pawn in somebody else's game. He was really nice, and clever too, but not enough to see all this coming, apparently. I took the USB out of my pocket and stared at it. But what secrets did my father keep? We didn't have anything fishy, right? My father did talk a lot about how hard he worked, and how honestly he conducted himself. So why did he specifically ask me not to peek at the file? A little look wouldn't hurt, right? I know. It's not very good of me to disobey my father, but come on, I'm his daughter. I'm set to take over from him anyways. So consider this a double check, eh? Just to be sure. I regret looking at that file. I truly do, as the truth was unbearable. It turns out, my father had been lying to me from the very beginning. So Charles was actually telling the truth. He was indeed stealing dirty secrets from my father to bring it to the light. Ironic, isn't it? I laughed at him for being so gullible and believed the lies about my father's company, while it was me who got lied to. These truths were hard to swallow. I bore the legacy of a lifetime of scamming and cheating. No, I didn't want to live like that. It was just so wrong. As I delivered both the USB and Charles to my father, I knew what I needed to do. So I held the USB out to my father and said, "Daddy, I looked at it, so I now know everything. Please stop." "Leanna, so your father turned himself in and will be in jail for a while. So what do you plan on doing with the company?" I was quiet for a moment. This was a big question. Should I continue with my father's business, or put an end to it once and for all? I thought back to the day when I confronted my father. "But Princess, I did it all for you. It's your legacy." "I don't want to live with dirty money, Dad. You've always been my hero, but now I'm just ashamed of you." His face fell, and I saw the sadness in his eyes. Seeing my father like that was the worst feeling in the world. Then it looked like he realized something. My father quietly nodded, handed me the president of the company seal, and sadly left the room. I'm afraid that I would repeat my father's mistake. So, taking a deep breath, I looked the journalist directly in the eyes and assertively said, "After careful consideration, I've decided to close the company. After the conference, I was on my way out of the building when Charles caught up with me and asked, "Well, Liana, what will you do now?" I shrugged. I don't know. I suppose anything is possible. Although, I do need a place to stay first. I can't return to mine. I can't bear it. Well, if you'd like, you could stay with me. Charles smiled at me. Yeah, I'd like that. Then grinning, I added, as long as you don't try to kick me out this time, or drag me through a forest. I hate what my father did, but in the end, he did own up to his crimes and is paying the price. As for me, I was just going to take one day at a time and see where life took me. And if that just so happened to involve a certain James Bond wannabe, then so be it. I walked into the cafeteria and gulped. The only free seat was next to Joanna, one of the weirdest girls in school. She was always sitting alone, and usually I'd avoid her because people said she didn't speak much and was totally shy. But somehow, I felt kinda sorry for her. I mean, how bad could it be? Well, famous last words. It was bad. I sat down with a smile, but she just glared at me and grunted, "Go on then. Throw me your worst insult." I was confused and said, "Oh, no, I just wanted to sit here and say hi. Are you okay?" Suddenly, Joanna started speaking at 1,000,000 miles per hour, telling me that of course she wasn't okay and that she had to see a therapist every day. Then she showed me all the pills she had to take and said she had crippling anxiety. I was shocked. Overwhelmed with TMI, I felt uncomfortable and thought of leaving, but then she grabbed my hand and said, "We're friends now, right? I've never had a friend in my life before. You're the first person I've really been able to open up to. Not even my parents know how hard it is for me." Whoa, I couldn't leave her now. I patted on her shoulder and told her I'd happily be her friend. I mean, it would just be spending some lunch together or grabbing a coffee at most. It'd be fine. However, Joanna's interpretation of a friend was slightly different from mine. 3 days later, I got back from the library quite late, so I went straight to my room as usual and started changing, only to find Joanna right behind me as I turned around. I almost woke up the whole building with a scream of fright. "Oh, hey, Rumi," she said with a big grin. What? This was insane. Rumi? What do you mean? But she just laughed and said she'd felt very lonely in her dorm on her own, and seeing as I had a double room, she'd asked the dorm supervisor if she could move in with me. I guess it wasn't so bad. I mean, I got lonely too sometimes. So that night, we stayed up super late chatting. And to be honest, it was actually nice to have a roomie. We became quite close, and a few nights later, we were having a movie night. Joanna turned to me and said, "Carrie, there's something I need to tell you." Oh no, surely there wasn't any more disturbing things left. How did this girl cope? But then she started blushing and said, "I have a crush on someone. His name is Mitch." Oh gosh, I knew exactly who she was talking about. "Joanna, he's bad news. He's a total womanizer. You're way too good for him." At least, that's what I said, but what I meant was that he was only into popular girls. He'd never go for a girl like Joanna. Joanna didn't take it well. "You're jealous, aren't you? I bet you have a crush on him too." "Well, I confessed, so he's mine." Huh, you're welcome to him. I never fancy someone like Mitch. I'm not that kind of girl. Joanna then said she'd prove to me that she could win him over. I felt annoyed at her and just went back to watching the movie. For a second there, it felt like my life had way more drama than ever before, and I started regretting ever sitting at her table that day. Little did I know, it was just the beginning. A week later, I was hit in the face by a huge surprise. Joanna and Mitch started dating. I was lying there listening to music when I heard voices outside the door. I opened it, and there was Mitch walking off. He turned back to blow Joanna a kiss, and then you should have seen the smug expression on her face. "Told ya," she said, laughing. Wow, cocky. But okay, I was happy for her. She was a woman of her word. But I was worried she'd get hurt. I didn't have time to tell her this, though, because pretty soon she was with him 24/7. He even came over to our dorm, and I was sick of listening to them kissing. They were disgustingly lovey-dovey all the time, and it quickly became exhausting. On Valentine's Day, he sent 100 balloons to our dorm, and I couldn't even get through the door. Could he be any more over the top? It wasn't even that romantic. But Joanna was smitten. It was painful to watch. But not as painful as seeing Mitch walking along the street holding some other girl's hand. I froze. This couldn't be. I quickly texted Joanna asking her how things were going between her and Mitch. She replied immediately saying, "All good, why?" So I told her what I'd seen, but I got no reply. I rushed back to our dorm and asked her why she was ignoring me and if she was okay. But she just started shouting at me, saying I was trying to ruin her relationship because I was jealous. Clearly, she didn't believe me. I told her I was telling the truth, but she just got up and left, slamming the door behind her. Things got really awkward after that. She ignored me in the dorm, ignored me in class, and wouldn't reply to any of my texts. And she still brought Mitch back to our room and kissed him in front of me. Eventually, I couldn't take it anymore and asked her to move out. But I didn't expect what would happen next. Joanna lost it. She started shouting, "What's your problem? For the first time in my life, I'm happy and someone loves me. And there you are, trying to ruin this for me. And now you want to kick me out? It's not my fault you're single, Carrie. Maybe if you stopped being so jealous for a second, someone would like you back." I couldn't believe her. I wanted to scream. She was the worst. And the next morning, it got even worse. I was sitting with some friends before class started when suddenly Joanna walked in and burst into tears. People ran over to her and asked if she was okay, and that's when my blood ran cold. She started saying how I'd been bad-mouthing her boyfriend, and now I wanted to kick her out of our dorm. And then I heard my voice. I looked over, and she had her phone out and was playing a recording of our argument. Of course, she'd edited it to make me sound like the bad guy. Even my friends looked shocked, and Joanna told them all how I was a two-faced, good-for-nothing kind of girl and that I loved to gossip about everyone behind their backs. I tried to explain to everyone that Joanna was lying and that she was just angry, but everyone looked at me in shock. It was like they believed her. I was stunned. The next day, I noticed Joanna showing my friends some photos on her phone. They were screenshots of texts from me, but she'd edited them to create a total monster out of me. One time, Joanna had messaged me laughing about how my friend Valerie had the worst hairstyle ever, and I joked that she must have cut it by herself. And there was the message where Joanna talked about how Mitch said his ex, Anna, who was also our class president, must have been flirting with the economics teacher to get good grades. And I said, "Has Anna sunk that low? Not only having an affair with a married man, but basically committing academic fraud? I don't think she would do that, though." But of course, Joanna had cropped out the last sentence, and she didn't show her parts in the conversation either. By that way, I looked like the worst friend ever. I tried to tell them what Joanna was doing, but they were too hurt to believe me. But that's not all. You see, Joanna had sent these messages to the whole school. For the rest of the day, people were coming up to me and telling me I was nothing but a mean girl. And then at lunch, I went to sit in my usual spot with my friends, and suddenly they all jumped up and left me there alone. I could hear everyone whispering about me. And then the most popular girl, Amy, came over to me and said I was a disappointment to this college. and I didn't even deserve to be here. I couldn't hold back my tears, so I rushed back to my dorm. But standing there with her arms folded, blocking the door, was the dorm supervisor. She said that she'd received reports about my behavior and that I had 1 week to move out of the dorm. I didn't understand. What had I done? Apparently, people had told her I wanted to get her fired. And then I remembered Joanna saying those exact words and asked me how she could report to the manager. So I'd sent her a text explaining how to report her. Oh my gosh, she'd even used that against me? This was too much. I went to find Joanna. I was furious. She was ruining my life. When I got to class, I planned to show everyone our full chat conversations, unedited. But I didn't get the chance because Joanna was sobbing hysterically, and everyone was comforting her. She was saying how living with me was torture, and that she had to take medication to deal with me. Enough! How dare you! I screamed. Why are you doing this to me? What did I ever do to you? Joanna, of course, started crying even louder, and everyone stared at me like they wanted to kill me. I walked out of there feeling completely empty. I'd lost my friends, my dorm, my reputation, and every last bit of dignity, all because of that snake. I still didn't know what I'd done wrong. The more I tried to understand it, the more everyone defended Joanna. It was useless. No one listened to me. Eventually, I ignored them all, moved out of the dorm, and acted like Joanna didn't exist. Fortunately, I made some new friends that loved and trusted me and never twisted my words. As for gossiping about me that everyone else still did, I learned to block it out. And then about 4 months later, I got an email from Joanna. I was shocked. She said, "Carrie, I'm sorry. You were right all along. Mitch was cheating on me, and I should have listened to you. Please forgive me. I'm begging you. I'll do anything to make it up to you. I'll confess to everyone. Please, let's just be friends again. I miss you." Ha! Not in a million years. I deleted the email right away. There was nothing that she could do to ever make it up to me. She'd ruined my life, and I was done with that toxicity. Good riddance. It was a regular morning, and I was sorting my books out in my locker when excited screams and cheers distracted me. Huh? It was way too early for this level of noise. A group of girls was lingering around the bulletin board. I walked over to take a look. Turns out, it was just the latest poster of Hillary, the prettiest girl in school, for her campaign of becoming prom queen. Well, yeah, typical reaction, since Hillary alone is too perfect already. All day, I found myself thinking about the Queen Hillary poster. Oh, I wish I could be as beautiful as she is. I mean, I'm not that ugly, but damn sure I'm not beautiful like her. OMG, look at me. My cheekbones aren't defined enough. My lips aren't pumped enough. My hair is too frizzy. And I literally have to jump on the spot to get myself into my favorite pair of jeans. Let's face it, I was plain and ordinary, while Hillary, she was oh so beautiful. Mom called me down for dinner, so I sat there glumly twirling my fork around my plate. Mom must have noticed something was up, as frowning she asked me, "Sonia, what's wrong? You've barely touched your dinner." "I'm not hungry," I sighed out. "Anyways, I'm big enough already, and ugly enough." "Sweetie, don't be silly. You look lovely." Yeah, right. Mom was only saying that because she felt like she had to. I thanked her for dinner, then went back to my room and scrolled through Hillary's profile. There wasn't one bad picture of her. Not one! She was so flawless, while I was, well, full of flaws. The next day, I was hanging out on the school field with my best friend Sydney and my boyfriend Lucas. when Hillary passed by in a stunning dress. Jeez, look how gorgeous she was. Earth to Sonia. Sydney threw a potato chip at me. I turned and gave her a "what was that for" look. She rolled her eyes and continued, "Stop staring at little Miss Popular and pay attention to us. You know, your actual friends. Hello?" "Sorry," I sighed. "It's just that she looks so pretty in that dress. It's not fair. She doesn't even have to try. Well, on me, it'd look like I was wearing a garbage bag." "Stop comparing yourself to her. It's dumb."
Yeah, Hillary's Hillary. You are you. And you have your own beauty.
I shook my head. Yeah, right. I didn't have any beauty. Instead, I was ordinary, while Hillary was extraordinary. Chemistry was the only class I shared with Hillary, and for that entire 45 minutes, I just couldn't stop staring over at her, transfixed. As the teacher droned on about the periodic table, I daydreamed about how amazing it would be to have hair as glossy, skin as clear as hers. I caught her staring back at me a couple of times, and one time she mouthed, "What?" then rolled her eyes and annoyedly turned away. But still, I couldn't take my eyes off of her. After the lesson, I followed her to her next class, even though it was in a different direction to where I needed to be. I watched on with envy as her boyfriend, Ethan, the captain of the basketball team, looked at her adoringly, and how her pretty friends flocked around her. It must be so awesome to be that perfect. My Hillary obsession continued at home. Each evening, I scrolled through her profile and saved any new pics she'd posted. Then I'd just lay in bed staring at her perfect features and comparing them to my not-so-perfect ones. I even printed out my fave pics of her and framed them on my desk. Then one day, my worst nightmare came true. I was on my way to meet Lucas when I saw him standing in the hallway and talking to Hillary. That's odd. A popular girl like Hillary would never enjoy talking to a normie like him. Oh man, look how Lucas keeps laughing, then giggling. What if Hillary likes him? That kind of girl definitely gets whatever she wants easily. I couldn't watch any more of this, so I sent Sydney an emergency message and rushed off to the bathroom. She found me crying in the cubicle and asked me what was wrong. I told her what had happened and she frowned. "Are you insane? Lucas was probably just being polite to her. Geez, he's with you for a reason, so get over this Hillary fixation. It's weird." Why did Sydney have to be so rude? I wanted her support, not her backlash. So I didn't meet up with her after school as planned. Instead, I went straight home and looked through my Hillary photos. I cut out sections of her lips, nose, hair, and stuck them on top of a photo of me. Looking down at it, well, wow, I looked so much better. It was then that I decided I would have a perfect face like her. So clutching the improved photo, I hurried down to my mom and waved it in her face. Look how perfect I'd be if I changed a few things. Please will you lend me the money to pay for surgery? Please? Mom looked horrified.
"Sonia, you're only 17, and you're already beautiful. You don't need to put yourself through all this pain and risks to look like someone else."
I tried explaining to her that I didn't want to continue my life looking as plain and boring as I did, but she didn't listen at first. It took me a lot of time to talk her through, and let's face it, she also has had a nose job before. So what's the big deal about me getting mine fixed too, along with a few more touch-ups? That summer, I lied to Sydney and Lucas that I was spending the whole holiday with my dad and stepmom. I showed the surgeon a photo of Hillary as an example of the results I wanted. So he narrowed my nose, inserted cheek implants to give me a more defined look, and injected my lips with filler. I woke up after surgery in agony. Oh dear God, it hurts. I couldn't talk, and even crying was painful. Worse still, with all the bandages, I resembled an Egyptian mummy. Then, when the bandages were removed, my face was all swollen and puffy. and I had to do these massages to improve my facial muscles again. Pain is beauty, and beauty is pain, isn't it? Mom wasn't exactly impressed with what I did, as I didn't really tell her I would change my entire face. Still, she spent the summer looking after me, even though I did have to put up with her whining and sometimes even tears. Once healed, all that was left to do was have my hair colored and cut like Hillary's, and change my style to match hers. With my new look complete, I looked at the mirror and smiled. Finally, I was beautiful. I returned to school excited for everyone to see my new look, but as I walked through the hallway, everyone stared and gossiped about me. People I didn't know surrounded me and bombarded me with questions such as, "Which parts did you fix? How much? And did it hurt?" Nobody actually complimented me or anything. Then, as I was sorting out my locker, I heard a cough. I looked up to see Sydney standing there with her arms folded. "So, was it worth it?" I wasn't in the mood for this, so I replied, "You can't say anything nice, can you? This is who I am now. I'm being my true self, and I'm happy." "No, this is you trying to be someone you're not." I slammed my locker shut and stormed off. What kind of person doesn't support her own best friend? My day went from bad to worse when I met Lucas at lunch. He glared at me, then angrily said, "Sonia, why? There was nothing wrong with you before, but now you're just a clone of someone else." He went to leave, but I held his arm. "Please, I did this because I want to be more beautiful. For you. I did this for you." Lucas shook his head, then gave a thoughtful sigh. He didn't try to leave after that, but he kept giving me this pitying look. Then, when I was walking to class, a guy ran up behind me and put his arm around my waist. "Hi there, my baby." Startled, I immediately pushed him away. Oh, it was Ethan, Hillary's boyfriend. "What's wrong? But, wait, why does your face look so weird?" I pushed him off me and ran away. OMG! That was horrifying! My heart was still pumping. From then on, people continued to mistake me for Hillary. Then whenever Sydney sat with me, they gossiped about how tragic it was that she was trying to be a cool kid. It made her feel uncomfortable, so she stopped hanging out with me at school. I had to sit by myself and felt so lonely. Then there was Lucas. Whenever I tried so much as hug him, he flinched. Then he admitted that he found my new look strange and intimidating. Life carried on, and prom grew closer. I noticed one of the Queen Hillary posters had been ripped off, and in its place was another poster of a girl named Kim. Geez, this prom queen campaign seems very stressful. Then, as I stepped outside, I heard someone shout, "Now!" Then the next thing I knew, stuff was thrown at me. In just a blink, I was covered in tomatoes and eggs. Yuck! Then a group of girls smirking stepped out and one said, "You should just give up trying to be prom queen before it's too late." I blurted out while taking pieces of eggshell off of my hair. "What? Why attack me?" "Oh wait! Girls, it's the plastic Hillary wannabe." "Well, you still deserve this. Have fun being a failed version of Hillary." They laughed as they left, leaving me standing there feeling worse than ever. I went to the bathroom to clean myself up and walked in on Hillary applying her makeup in the mirror. Whoa, her face actually wasn't so perfect with all the makeup on. "Oh wow, it's you." She glanced at me. "You know, everyone is talking about you even more than me," she said, while covering her eyelid with tons of eyeshadows. "I mean, I'm kind of flattered, but trust me, you look ridiculous. You're like the Walmart version of me. I feel sorry for Lucas for having a super insecure girlfriend like you." Then she flicked her hair and left. I looked at myself in the mirror, tears streaming down my face. So Hillary was just a mean girl who faked her butt off to build a friendly image and covered her mediocre face with a lot of makeup. She wasn't perfect, just like me. From then on, I desperately longed to look like myself again. I begged Mom to lend me the money to fix my face, but she refused. No more. Once is enough. Isn't this all you wanted? Great. Now I was going to be stuck looking like this forever. Until one night, my cheeks started aching. Soon, I couldn't so much as twitch my face without being in serious pain. Mom found me clutching my face in agony and drove me to the hospital. The doctor told me my implants had leaked and I needed emergency surgery to remove them. This happened a month ago. Now, when I look in the mirror, luckily, I don't see Hillary anymore. Instead, I see me, but in a quite different look. I've well and truly learned my lesson, and Sydney and Lucas have been there to help me through everything. Now I know that I should have learned how to love myself instead of comparing myself to someone else. I am who I am. And you know what? I now realize that I'm okay with that.
Now, where is her turquoise scarf? That will definitely complete my look. I was raiding Mom's closet to find it when I accidentally dropped a belt on the floor. But strangely enough, it made a really weird sound. So I gave it a few knocks. Wait, it did sound like the ground was hollow. I took a closer look. And oh my God, there was a hidden hatch or something in my mom's closet. Of course, I had to figure this out. So after a few attempts, I finally managed to open it and found a big wooden box. Why was she keeping something a secret from us? I took a deep breath and I opened the box. There were some old pics of my mom when she was younger, an old teddy bear, and some cassette tapes. Why on earth did she have to hide these? I dug even deeper and found a stack of letters. All of them were from the same address. Hang on, I knew that place. It was an orphanage just outside the city. So far, nothing made sense to me, so obviously I had to read them. They were all from this orphanage sister called Anna Maria. She kept writing about some girl named Eliza, and the more I read, I eventually realized that this girl, Eliza, was my mom's daughter. That meant I had a half-sister? I couldn't believe it. And from the sounds of things, my mom hadn't seen Eliza since the day she'd dropped her at the orphanage. So my mom didn't even know what she looked like after all these years? This was insane! How could Mom have done this? Not to mention the fact my dad is a politician, so I'd been raised to always be a good person, just like them. But after what I just found out, I didn't know what to believe anymore. This is so absurd. But one thing was for sure, I had to find Eliza. The next day after school, I went to the orphanage. I told Anna Maria everything, and then she said that Eliza had left when she turned 18, but that she came back every weekend to help out. She then gave me Eliza's home address. I followed Google Maps and ended up in a seriously creepy neighborhood. As I knocked on her door, a billion questions ran through my head. What if she didn't want anything to do with us? What if she hated me because I stole this great life that was supposed to be hers? But there was no backing down now. As soon as the door opened, I froze. Could this really be my half-sister? Standing there was this tall, mysterious-looking girl. I was trembling as I said, "Hi, are you Eliza?" She just gave me a skeptic look, then replied,
Why? Who are you?
I couldn't hold back my tears and said, "I can't believe I found you. I'm Alicia, your half-sister." Eliza looked shocked and then said, "Oh, okay, calm down. Come on in, then we'll talk." I sat on the couch and told her everything. Then she began to tell me how miserable her life was, how she worked 4 jobs and it still wasn't enough to pay the bills. Gosh, I felt so guilty hearing all of this. How was it fair that I had a carefree, happy life and she'd been left all alone? I couldn't leave Eliza like that. I had to do something. After that, I rushed home and dragged Mom to my room so I could speak to her privately. I confronted her, and at first she denied it, but she eventually burst into tears and admitted everything. I couldn't believe my ears when I heard the whole story. When she was 18, she'd given birth to Eliza, but Eliza's dad wouldn't take any responsibility. So my mom decided to raise Eliza on her own. It was tough for her, as she didn't have a decent job. Then after about 6 months, my dad appeared and showed interest in her, and because he came from a wealthy family, my mom jumped at the chance to be with him. However, she thought that if he knew about Eliza, he wouldn't be keen. So with a heavy heart, she decided to send Eliza to the orphanage. Ever since then, she'd sent a letter to Anna Maria every year on Eliza's birthday. But she asked her not to send any photos of Eliza, as it was too painful to see. I couldn't believe my mom gave up her daughter for money. I begged my mom to meet up with Eliza. She at least owed her that. I explained how miserable Eliza's life was, and how she didn't deserve that. Finally, my mom agreed. So the next day, she picked me up from school and we went to Eliza's. As soon as my mom saw her, they were hugging and crying, and my mom was shocked at the shabby state of Eliza's place and immediately told her to come live with us. Oh, wow, Mom! I'm glad that we're reunited, but wasn't that decision too impulsive? What about Dad? Well, of course, he was super shocked. My mom sat him down and explained who Eliza was, but he didn't take it well, and they ended up getting into a huge fight, which resulted in my dad moving out. I couldn't believe it. So, from that moment on, it was just me, my mom, and Eliza. I missed my dad so much, but it felt kind of nice to suddenly have a sister. I'd always wanted a sibling. We could hang out together, gossip, go shopping. OMG! This was going to be so much fun. But turns out it wouldn't be as fun as I'd hoped. One night, Eliza was watching a movie. I sat down next to her and said, "Oh man, I love this movie, but I can't stand the female lead. Her voice is so annoying." I turned to check on Eliza's reaction, but she stayed stiff as a board. So I continued. "In fact, she sounds just like my friend Kayla." Still no replying from Eliza. In fact, she didn't even look at me. Was she even listening? Well, clearly she was, because a few days later, my friends came over, including Kayla. And when Eliza passed us, she said, "Bet that annoying Kayla girl you told me about isn't here, right?" Oh my God. I literally froze. How could she say that right in front of everyone? In front of Kayla? I was mortified. And the worst part was that Kayla didn't want to be my friend anymore after that. Even my other friends stopped hanging out with me. They thought I was just another mean girl. And that wasn't all. Eliza started acting really weird. One day I came home from school to find her in my bedroom looking at my old photos. Then when she saw me, she said in a creepy voice, "You're so lucky you weren't abandoned like me." My God, that gave me chills. Then later that night, I overheard her asking our mom if she could get an allowance to make up for lost time. Oh, wow. But that was only fair, right? Well, the next day, I couldn't find my fave lipstick. And given that Eliza recently had unannounced visits to my room, I went to ask her. But she just shrugged and said, "Yeah, I took it. So what?" Whoa. Since when did she become so rude? Hang on, she was also wearing my floral dress. That was it. I'd had enough. I went straight to my mom and told her what Eliza had done. I expected my mom to be on my side, but she wasn't. She told me to be more understanding as Eliza wasn't used to being around other people, so she needed some time to adapt. That's ridiculous. And then it got even worse. She started to target my dad. "You should divorce him. The way he just left you like that, what an awful husband," she told my mom when the two of them were preparing dinner. "You could claim ownership of everything. You just need to prove that he's cheating on you, or that he's corrupt or something. I mean, he's a politician, so I'm sure he's doing at least one of those things." I honestly couldn't believe what I was hearing. I stormed into the room and started shouting at Eliza to stop trash-talking my dad. Then I turned to Mom. "Don't listen to her poisoned lies." But Mom just sighed and replied, "Eliza isn't entirely wrong. Your dad did just leave us, and he hasn't even called. Clearly, he's having an affair." OMG, that snake was brainwashing my mom. A few days later, I saw an article that my dad was charged for corruption. How was that even possible? My dad is a good man. There must be a misunderstanding or something. Could it be something to do with Eliza? "It was you, wasn't it? You accused my dad of corruption." I stormed in and screamed at Eliza. My mom was shocked and said, "Alicia, what are you talking about?" So I told my mom that Eliza must have planned this, and my mom said, "Don't be absurd. She has nothing to gain from that. Stop speaking nonsense and apologize to Eliza." Mom, I think I know what this is about. Alicia hates me, so she's starting to make up lies about me. In fact, you should be careful that she isn't a pathological liar or something. Or maybe even worse, she could have a mental disorder. My mom then said, "You're right, sweetie. Alicia, you need help. I'm going to make a hospital appointment for you." What? Was she serious? I tried to convince her that I was fine, but she wouldn't listen. I then turned to Eliza. "You won't get away with this." The next day, my mom tried to get me to go to the hospital, but I locked my bedroom door and refused to leave. But it didn't take long for her to find the spare key, and this time she came back with some dudes next door to help hold me down. I tried my best to break free, but it was hopeless. At that exact moment, I heard my dad's voice.
Let her go.
I looked up and saw my dad was with a woman. My mom looked horrified and said, "How dare you bring your mistress into our home?" But my dad said,
It's not what it looks like, honey. This is Eliza, the real Eliza. That woman over there is an imposter. Her real name is Kim.
OMG! I knew something was wrong with her. You might be wondering why my dad suddenly appeared. Well, I called him the day before and asked him to investigate Eliza, as I had a feeling there was something fishy going on. He went to the orphanage to get more info, and the sisters there kept saying Eliza was the sweetest woman, and that if he waited, he could meet her. Well, then the real Eliza turned up, and that's when my dad found out the truth. Turns out Kim was once Eliza's roommate. Eliza had moved out, but the sisters at the orphanage didn't know this, so they still gave me the old address. Eliza knew about my mom the whole time as she'd found the letters, but she was still mad about being abandoned, so wasn't ready to meet her. She told Kim everything about my family and how wealthy we were, so when I went by the old address and asked about Eliza, Kim seized the opportunity to steal Eliza's identity. My dad pointed at Kim and said, "I'll give you 10 seconds to get out of my house or I'll call the police. Don't you ever come near my family again." Kim fled immediately, and we never saw her again. As for the real Eliza, well, that was quite the reunion. At first it didn't go well, but gradually Eliza opened up to my mom, and of course my dad's corruption charges were dropped after he was found innocent. He also forgave my mom and moved back in. Eliza visits us often, and I have to say, it's exactly what I hoped having a big sister would feel like. I'm so glad we're all reunited now.
Really? You're from Korea? No way. You sound just like a native speaker.
Richard jumped up in surprise as I told him I came from South Korea. "Yeah, I'm 100% Korean," I answered him, giggling. I had spent hours every day practicing my English. Guess it has paid off. But that was 6 years ago already. I'm Jenny, by the way, and I'm Korean. At the time I was 21, I joined an online English speaking club, where I first met Richard, who never in a million years did I think I'd fall in love with. But that's exactly what happened. Ever since that very first class, we started talking every day, and the sparks between us were undeniable. He always mentioned how he wished I could be in the Czech Republic with him, and I found myself daydreaming about our future wedding. Okay, so I was getting ahead of myself, but he was just so amazing. After a month of talking nonstop, I realized I was probably going to fail college if I didn't start setting my priorities straight. But all I could think about was him. And whenever we weren't chatting, I was stalking him on social media. And every time I saw him tagged with another girl, I got so jealous. This couldn't be healthy. I mean, I hadn't even met him in real life, but still, we continued to fall for each other. And he even introduced me to his two best friends, Anastasia and Pavel, via video chat. But not as blossoming as my love life, I was failing miserably at college. I'd always been the one who laughed at my lovesick friends, and now I was no better than them. This wasn't right. Something had to change. So even though it was killing me inside to do this, one night before sitting down on my desk to work on my assignment, I just picked up my phone and blocked his WhatsApp, deactivated my Facebook, and all without letting him know. Yep, I full-on ghosted him. It was such a hard decision, because that night, instead of getting anything done for the assignment, I found myself lying in bed with a tear-soaked pillow. It hurt so much, but I had to think about my future. My parents would kill me if I didn't get a good job. I couldn't let them down. Anyway, Pavel messaged me a few days later saying Richard had gone totally crazy and he'd never seen him this upset before. He barely ate anything and would drink all day. He's not much different from a zombie now. But I stayed unfazed bet he'd be okay though. He was young and handsome and girls were always after him. He'd get over me soon. And I'd get over him, right? If only it were that easy. I missed him every single day. Even though we'd been thousands of miles apart, he somehow always made me feel so safe, like he was right there next to me. What had I done? I'd ruined everything. Ugh. Instead of wasting time overthinking, it'd be better to put all my energy into my studies for now, right? And it worked. When graduation came around, I was the top student in my class and even got accepted on an exchange program in Australia. Without even thinking, I texted Richard to tell him the good news. I apologized for disappearing on him and said it had messed with my mind because I hadn't expected to fall for him so hard. I had just needed some time to finish my studies, but now I was ready to reconnect again. Well, he'd seen my messages, but there was no reply. It felt like someone had punched me in the heart. Hours later, he finally replied and said,
Sorry, Jenny. I'll get in touch soon. Now isn't the best time.
I couldn't believe the words I was reading. I could actually hear the sound of my heart shattering, but it served me right. I was the one who'd gotten rid of him. He deserved better. But still, I stalked him every day online, and then I realized the only way to solve this would be to fly to the Czech Republic and find him. First, though, I had my exchange program in Australia. I bought a new phone and got a new number for the trip to leave my old one in Korea for my uncle who was always complaining about his outdated phone. Those 3 months in Australia were awesome, and I got my mind off things for a little. I was ready to start fresh when I got back from the trip, until my uncle told me that someone had texted me on my old phone, but because he didn't know English, he didn't know if it was for me or not. I immediately checked it, and there was a message from Richard that said,
Jenny, I'm so sorry for my last message. I miss you so much. Your smile, your eyes, your voice. I hope you can give me another chance. Love, Richard.
OMG! Months had passed since he'd sent it, and the worst part of all is that my uncle had read the message, and so it said seen. This was a disaster. Okay, but I had to focus on the positive. He missed me. Maybe it wasn't too late. I tried to call him, but he didn't answer, so I texted him and explained what had happened. He finally replied and said he thought I'd given up on him. I'd never give up on him. We then had a proper phone call. I am still thinking about you all the time. Why didn't you send me a Facebook message? The words tumbled out of my mouth in a rush, as if I was afraid I would lose contact with him again in any sec. Suddenly, he went all quiet. And then he told me he'd recently met someone, and that he hoped I'd understand and still want to be friends. I felt devastated. Why was it so hard for us? But in the end, there was no other choice for me. I just wished him well and hung up. All I could do now was move on. It was time to find someone else to date. Clearly, Richard and I weren't meant to be. My heart hurt, but I found a job and threw myself into it, giving it all my attention. Eventually, I got promoted, and after 5 years, I was able to help my parents pay off their debt. I even moved up to a management position. Of course, during this time I dated a bit, but I couldn't make any of the relationships last. I just missed Richard all the time. I kept dreaming of us spending Christmas together. It was so frustrating. I mean, it had been 5 years, and we hadn't spoken at all. Why couldn't I just get over him? I occasionally went on his Facebook page, but all I could see was his profile pic that remained the same for years. I'd unfriended Anastasia and Pavel, too, so I couldn't stalk them either. For all I knew, he could be someone's husband now. Maybe even a dad. And yet still, I never gave up hope that maybe we'd meet in real life, our paths would cross, and we'd finally get to be together. I couldn't stop thinking about this. And then 3 weeks before Christmas, I got a new following request on Instagram. I couldn't believe it. It was Pavel. And he was now married to Anastasia. This made me so happy. And he told me they were going on their honeymoon to Korea and hoped to see me. OMG, this was so exciting. I desperately wanted to ask him about Richard, but I was terrified to hear that he had kids or something. Anastasia messaged me too and asked how I was doing. I told her I was still single because I worked all the time. Hey, there was no way I could tell her it was because I was still obsessed with Richard. Anyway, the week flew by, and finally I was at the airport awaiting to meet Pavel and Anastasia in real life. They both looked so sweet, and I gave them the biggest hugs. After hugging them, I noticed someone standing behind them. OMG. Was that Richard? What was he doing there? I was so stunned I couldn't move. It was really him. Pavel broke the silence by saying,
We brought Richard along for you, Jenny. Feel free to hit him, bite him, kick him, or whatever you want to do if you think he deserves it.
Out of complete shock, I just burst into tears. It had been 6 long years of total silence, and now here he was, looking at me. I asked myself, could I hug him? But I didn't even get a chance to answer my thought because he ran towards me and picked me up in his arms, squeezing me tightly. Then he whispered in my ear,
I'm so sorry, Jenny. Please don't cry. I'm here. I won't leave you. I promise.
Could I trust him, though? I was still in shock as I drove them to their hotel, and then again later when I drove to take them out for some Korean food. I was nervous about hanging out with them all, but we seriously had the best night eating, drinking, and laughing. The next day, Pavel and Anastasia would start their honeymoon. So maybe then Richard and I would have some time alone together to talk about whatever was left between us. After dropping them back at their hotel, I was driving away when suddenly I saw Richard running back towards me. He said he wanted to tell me something, so I pulled over and we sat down on a bench to talk. I listened as he told me that over the past 6 years he tried to date other girls, but it never worked out because I was always in the back of his mind. He said he'd spend most of his time working so he could save up to visit me or buy me a ticket so I could come and visit him. It had taken him longer than he'd hoped because his parents had got divorced and he'd been looking after his mom, who was super depressed. A few months later, she was diagnosed with cancer, and so he'd had to work even harder to help her pay for treatment. After 3 long years of fighting, she sadly passed away, and ever since then, he'd been feeling so lonely and sad. One day, he asked Pavel to contact me somehow, and when he found out I was still single, he was over the moon and decided it was finally time to come to Korea and see me. He said seeing me in real life had made him fall even more in love with me, which he hadn't thought was even possible. Then he hugged me tight and I couldn't stop crying. We spent Christmas together, just like I always dreamt of. And well, the rest is history. Here I am now, packing my bags to fly to the Czech Republic to see Richard. I can't wait to meet his family. And you'll never believe it, but we're even planning our wedding. The big question is, where do we live? Should I go there or should he move to Korea? To be honest, it doesn't matter. As long as we're together, it'll be perfect. So it's true what they say. If something is meant to be, it'll be. Even if it takes a year or 6. All I know is that I'm glad I had the patience because I've never been happier.